All right, so welcome to this deep dive. And today we're going to tackle a question I'm sure is on a lot of your minds. Is IBM stock a good fit for your portfolio?
Well, we're going to take a look at a number of things about IBM, financials, market, position their innovations, and hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a better understanding of whether it's right for you or not.
To get started, let's take a quick overview of IBM as a company. They've got a very long history, go back over a century, actually. They were originally founded in 1911 as the Computing Tabulating Recording Company.
Right.
But of course, they eventually became the International Business Machines in 1924, which is where we get the IBM, and that's where the nickname Big Blue came from.
Of course, yeah.
Uh,
And over that long period, they've had a really significant impact, with all kinds of inventions that really have shaped our world,
yeah.
ATMs, DRAM, the floppy disk,
Floppy disks.
UPC barcode, the list goes on and on. They really left their mark on technology. But the question is, as the technology landscape continues to evolve so rapidly, can this, more than 100-year-old company really keep up and adapt and thrive in the face of so much change?
Yeah, that's what we're really here to explore today. And to kind of get a sense of where they might be headed, I think it's really important to look at their current business focus.
Yeah.
And in recent years, they've really shifted away from the hardware, things like PCs, and started to focus more on software and particularly cloud computing services.
That's right. And I think one of the major milestones in that journey was the acquisition of Red Hat back in 2019 for, I think, a whopping $34 billion.
$34 billion.
Really trying to solidify their position in the open source and hybrid cloud markets,
Hybrid cloud, yeah.
which are expected to continue to grow rapidly. But of course, integrating a company like Red Hat that's known for its open source philosophy into this massive company like IBM, it's a challenge. So has it really paid off, or is it just introduced a new set of complexities?
Well, to get a better sense of that, let's take a look at their financial performance. Uh, in 2023, they reported a revenue of $61.8 billion
Go.
and a net income of $7.5 billion. So those are certainly big numbers.
Substantial.
But they do represent a shift from where the company was at its peak. Back in 2014, they had a market cap of over $153 billion.
Right. And that's a key point, because they have been wrestling with declining revenues for a number of years now. And some analysts have even said that they're resorting to what they call financial engineering, which is basically just, using accounting techniques and strategies to manipulate their financial statements to try to hit those quarterly targets instead of really investing in the long term. And that's obviously a bit of a red flag for investors. Is this a sign that they're struggling to keep up? Or is it just part of a, well-calculated restructuring? It's a really important question to figure out, are they creating real value or are they just kind of masking underlying problems?
So to understand where they stand a little better, let's look at their market share and the competition they're up against.
Sure.
So as of 2023, IBM is ranked as the 7th largest tech company based on revenue,
Mm-hmm.
which is still pretty impressive. But they are competing with, the biggest of the big, Microsoft, Amazon, Apple.
The 800-pound gorillas.
And all of these companies have massive resources, and they are constantly innovating.
Right. And to try to focus their efforts, IBM did spin off their Managed Infrastructure Services unit back in 2020. That became Kyndryl.
Okay.
And this really lets them double down on those high growth areas, things like cloud computing where the competition is really intense.
So that leads us to their innovation pipeline.
Yeah.
IBM is well known for investing in research and development, and they actually held the record for the most U.S. patents granted for 29 years in a row.
Yeah.
Until they were finally overtaken in 2021. And some of their current focus is in areas like AI, quantum computing,
And data infrastructure.
so these are all areas that could really revolutionize a lot of industries. And
Yeah.
IBM's commitment to research is certainly a strength.
Absolutely. And their work on quantum computers in particular is generating a lot of excitement, That's a technology that could potentially transform so many fields like medicine, materials, science, even finance. But, how far along are they really? And are they actually going to be the ones to lead the way in quantum computing? Or are they just another player in a very crowded field? That's a really important question for you to think about.
Right. And it's really all about, are those potential rewards going to outweigh the risks?
Hmm.
Because they are betting big on the future, but are those bets going to pay off? That's what we're going to continue to look at as we go on with this deep dive.
Yeah, so, kind of continuing on with that thought about, are they really innovating or are they just playing catch up? I think it's helpful to take a look at some of their recent acquisitions and divestitures to get a sense of, what direction are they headed in. We talked about Red Hat back in 2019, but they also picked up the digital assets of the weather company,
Oh, yeah?
expanding their, data analytics capabilities. And then, of course, you've got the divestitures like Kyndryl that we mentioned.
Yeah.
And they also sold off some of their Watson Health assets.
Yeah. So these moves really suggest that they're actively trying to reshape, what their portfolio looks like. But is it a clear vision for the future, or are they just reacting to the pressures, that they're feeling in the market?
Yeah, are they setting the agenda or are they following it?
Exactly.
And I think another area that's really important to think about as a potential investor is, their services, business consulting and professional services, actually represent a really big chunk of their overall revenue.
Yeah.
They're one of the leading IT consulting firms out there, and they've got a global workforce, I think over 280,000 employees as of 2023. To give you a sense of just how big their reach is.
So that strong presence in IT consulting, especially as AI, becomes even more integrated into different industries, it could be a good sign for their future.
It's something to keep an eye on for sure. And then, of course, you can't talk about investing without talking about valuation.
Right.
So their current market cap is hovering around $213.42 billion. But remember, valuation is really a puzzle.
Yeah. It's complicated.
There's a lot of pieces, and the current price is just one of them.
Yeah.
You also want to look at things like the price to earnings ratio or the PE ratio, which basically tells you how the market is valuing their earnings, right? So how does their PE ratio stack up against other tech companies with similar growth prospects?
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's something to consider. And speaking of growth, we have to acknowledge the fact that, there's a lot happening in the global economy that could potentially impact IBM. Things like, inflation, geopolitical tensions, all those things can affect a company that operates on a global scale.
Absolutely.
Things like, the strength of the US dollar can really impact international sales because it makes their products more expensive in other countries.
Makes them less competitive.
Exactly. And then, supply chain issues, rising energy costs, all of that can squeeze their profitability.
So with all of this in mind, the financial performance, the competition, the innovation, the economic outlook, what are the pros and cons of actually owning IBM stocks? What should a potential investor really be carefully thinking about?
Okay, so on the plus side, IBM does have, this long history of innovation, a strong brand.
Yeah.
They've got this global reach and a diverse portfolio of products and services. Their focus on these high growth areas like cloud computing and AI is definitely promising. And they're also really committed to sustainability and ethical practices, which is becoming increasingly important to a lot of investors.
For sure.
But there are also some potential downsides. Revenue growth in some areas has been pretty slow.
Right.
They face a lot of competition from those tech giants with very deep pockets. And those restructuring efforts that they're going through kind of create some uncertainty. And, the big investments that they're making in new technologies like quantum computing, there's no guarantee that's going to pay off.
Right.
And, I think it's worth mentioning, too, that IBM has a long history of paying dividends.
Okay.
They're considered a dividend aristocrat, which means they've increased their dividend payout for at least 25 years in a row.
Wow.
So that can be really attractive if you're looking for that consistent income.
Right.
However, their current dividend yield isn't that high.
Okay.
So it's something to factor in.
And they've been buying back a lot of their own stock in recent years, too, which some people see as positive sign. Like they believe that their shares are undervalued. But there's also people who think that it's a way to kind of artificially pump up their earnings per share.
Right.
Without really improving the business overall.
It's a complicated issue for sure.
So before we wrap things up, I think it's important to talk about ESG.
Yeah.
Environmental, social, and governance factors, which are becoming more and more important to investors.
Absolutely.
And IBM is actually committed to reaching net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030.
That's a big goal.
And they're also involved in ethical AI initiatives. They've even partnered with the Vatican on AI ethics.
Wow.
So, these commitments to ESG principles could make them a more attractive investment if you're someone who prioritizes sustainability and social responsibility as well as financial returns.
For sure.
Right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
A lot of information.
Explored a lot of the strengths and weaknesses of IBM as a company and as a potential investment. But ultimately, the big question is
IBM right for you?
Exactly.
That's a decision that only you can make. We've given you a lot to think about, their history, their challenges, their opportunities, but now it's time to kind of reflect on all of that and think about how it aligns with your own personal investment goals.
Right.
What's your risk tolerance and What's your vision for the future?
So as we wrap up our deep dive into IBM,
Hmm.
I think it's time to really step back and ask yourself, does this company really speak to you as a potential investment?
Yeah. Does it check those boxes for you?
We've looked at their past, their present, and what they're aiming for in the future.
They've had these amazing successes,
Right.
but they're also dealing with these, current challenges, and they're making these big bets on what the future's going to look like.
And the big question is,
Can they really pull it off?
can this company with so much history,
Hmm.
and such a complex structure,
Right.
can they really keep adapting in a world that is changing so incredibly fast?
Right. Is that legacy an asset or is it a burden at this point?
Right. Are they going to be nimble enough
Exactly.
to keep up?
That's the real question, isn't it?
It is. And I think, we've given you a lot of information to think about here,
Definitely food for thought.
but we always encourage our listeners to do their own research, to really dig in and see, what resonates with you. Come to your own conclusions.
Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
this is just the starting point.
Just the beginning.
Investing is a journey.
It is.
And, being informed is really the best tool that you can have.
Absolutely. Well, we hope that this deep dive has given you a better understanding of IBM and helped you to kind of start to figure out whether it's a good fit for you.
We hope so.
So before we go, we do want to invite you to keep the conversation going.
Yes.
Head over to our YouTube channel and let us know what stocks you would like us to deep dive into next.
Yeah, drop a comment down below.
We love hearing from all of you.
Absolutely.
So until next time, happy investing.
Happy investing, everyone.